I sat in my car outside the courthouse, watching my husband of 8 years walk out with his mistress on his arm. They were laughing. The ink on our divorce papers was barely dry, maybe 20 minutes old, and there they were, heading to the marriage registration office across the street. Same day. Same hour. Like I was nothing. Like our years together had been nothing but a pause before his real life could begin. My phone sat silent in my lap. I had turned off the ringer before entering the courthouse that morning. 3 hours ago I had been a wife. Now I was a woman watching her replacement claim her prize. The mistress wore red, a bold choice. Fitting. She had no shame, and apparently neither did he. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know what I had already done. At 9:47 that morning, exactly 13 minutes before I walked into the courthouse, I had sent a single email from my personal account to the HR director of Stellar Dynamics Corporation. The subject line read, "Immediate termination." The body contained one name, Bethany Crawford. My former sister-in-law. The woman who had hugged me at Thanksgiving and told me I was the sister she never had. The woman who earned a base salary of $450,000 plus bonuses that had reached $5.2 million last year. The woman who had known about the affair for 6 months and never told me. The HR director had replied within 4 minutes. Effective immediately. Security is escorting her out now. Severance package as discussed. I had discussed nothing. There would be no severance package. I own Stellar Dynamics. Every share. Every decision. Every dollar. And nobody in my ex-husband's family knew it. They thought Richard owned it. They thought Richard was the tech genius who had built a company from nothing. They believed his stories about late nights and brilliant innovations. They had no idea that Richard couldn't code his way out of a basic HTML page. They didn't know that every patent, every product, every breakthrough had come from my mind while Richard played CEO and took the credit. I had let him. It had been easier that way. Safer. I didn't like attention or public speaking or board meetings. I liked creating, building, solving problems that seemed impossible. Richard liked the spotlight, the prestige, the admiration. So we had made an arrangement. I would be the silent genius. He would be the face of success. And now he was the face of betrayal. I started my car and drove away from the courthouse. I didn't look back at him or his new bride. I had work to do. My phone started ringing at 2:34 p.m. I was in my private lab, 3 floors below the main Stellar Dynamics building, working on a prototype for quantum encryption that would revolutionize data security. The number on the screen was Richard's mother. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. By 3 p.m. I had 17 missed calls. Richard's mother. His father. His brother. His aunt. All family members who had smiled at me at dinner parties while whispering that Richard could have done better. All relatives who had accepted expensive gifts I had paid for while treating me like I should be grateful to be part of their family. At 3:45 p.m., Bethany called. I almost answered that one. Almost. But I remembered her at the wedding, holding my hand and promising we would always be sisters. I remembered her laughing at Richard's jokes and complimenting his intelligence. I remembered seeing her car parked outside the hotel where Richard had been meeting his mistress, and how she had sworn she was just getting coffee when I asked her about it. The phone calls continued. Different numbers now. Some I recognized, some I didn't. They were calling from office lines, cell phones, probably borrowing phones from friends. The desperation was almost funny. At 6:15 p.m., my lawyer called. I answered. "They're threatening to sue," Patricia said. She sounded amused. "Wrongful termination. Breach of contract. Defamation. The whole circus." "Let them," I said. "You're sure about this? Bethany is making quite a scene. She called a press contact. Says she's being targeted." "I'm certain." "Good. Because I've been waiting years to destroy these people legally. Just say the word." Patricia had been my lawyer since before I married Richard. She had drawn up the prenup that Richard never read carefully, the one that specified all intellectual property created during the marriage belonged to the person who created it. The one that established Stellar Dynamics as my sole property, with Richard as an employee, not a founder. The one that protected everything I had built. Richard had signed it at 11 p.m. the night before our wedding, drunk and happy and so sure of himself. He hadn't even read past the first page. At 8 p.m. Richard called. I stared at his name on my screen. I imagined him in his new apartment with his new wife, finally understanding that something had gone very wrong with his perfect plan. Finally realizing that his sister's firing might mean something bigger than he thought. I sent the call to voicemail. He called back immediately. Voicemail again. Then came a text. "We need to talk. Now." I deleted it. Another text. This is serious, Naomi. Answer your phone. Delete. You can't just fire Bethany. She's an executive. There are procedures. I almost laughed. Procedures? In the company I owned. In the business I had built from an idea I had sketched on a napkin in a coffee shop 9 years ago. My phone rang again. Richard's father this time. Gerald Crawford, the man who had told Richard at our rehearsal dinner that he was marrying down, but that I seemed trainable. I declined the call. The voicemail notification popped up. I played it on speaker while I soldered a connection on my prototype. Naomi, this is Gerald. I don't know what kind of tantrum you're throwing, but you've gone too far. Bethany is a crucial part of Stellar Dynamics. You had no right to have her fired. I'm calling an emergency board meeting, and we will be discussing your behavior. This is unacceptable. Call me back immediately. An emergency board meeting. Of a company he thought Richard owned. A board that consisted of me and 2 people I had hired who knew exactly who signed their paychecks. This was getting better by the minute. At 9:30 p.m. the calls became frantic. I had 42 missed calls now. The voicemails were getting nasty. Richard's mother called me ungrateful. His brother called me vindictive. His aunt called me something I wouldn't repeat. Bethany left a voicemail that was mostly crying. Between sobs she managed to say, "How could you do this to me? After everything our family did for you? Richard gave you everything and this is how you repay us? You're nothing without him. Nothing." I saved that one. Patricia would enjoy it. At 10:17 p.m. Richard showed up at my house. I watched him on the security camera, pounding on the door. His new wife sat in the car watching. She looked less happy than she had at the courthouse. "Naomi, open the door," Richard shouted. "We need to talk about this like adults." Adults. The man who had been sleeping with his coworker for 8 months while telling me he was working late wanted to talk like adults. "I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Open the door or I'm calling the police." I picked up my phone and called Patricia. "He's at my house," I said. "Do not engage. I'm getting a restraining order filed first thing tomorrow morning. Record everything." "Already doing that." Richard pounded on the door again. "This is ridiculous, Naomi. You can't fire Bethany. You don't have that authority. I'm going to fix this tomorrow, but we need to talk about your behavior. You're acting crazy." The word hung in the air. Crazy. The word men used when women stopped accepting their lies. I texted him from inside the house. "Leave now or I call the police for trespassing." My phone rang immediately. "Trespassing? This is my house too," he said. "No," I replied. "It's not. Check the deed. Leave now." There was silence. I could almost hear his brain working, trying to remember signing mortgage papers, trying to recall whose name was on the title. He had never paid attention to those details. I had handled all the finances, all the legal documents, all the boring paperwork while he gave interviews and attended conferences. "We'll see about that," he finally said. But his voice had changed. The first crack of doubt had appeared. He left 3 minutes later. The phone calls continued until midnight. 55 total. 55 attempts to intimidate, manipulate, threaten, and guilt me into backing down. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I finished my prototype, ate leftover Chinese food, and went to bed at 12:30 a.m. I slept better than I had in months, maybe years. Because tomorrow, they would start to understand exactly who they had been dealing with all along. Tomorrow the real story would begin. I woke up at 5 a.m. like always. The silence in my house felt different now. Peaceful. For 8 years, I had woken up next to a man who barely knew me. Who had never once asked about my work, my dreams, my ideas. Who had kissed me goodbye each morning and spent his days pretending to be someone he wasn't. I made coffee and opened my laptop. 73 new emails since midnight. Most from addresses at Stellar Dynamics. Several from reporters. 3 from Bethany's personal account with subject lines like, "Please," and "I'm begging you," and "You're ruining my life." I archived them all without reading. My phone showed 12 new voicemails. I deleted them. Instead, I opened the file I had been building for 3 months. Project Phoenix. The documentation of everything. Every late night I had spent coding while Richard slept. Every algorithm I had created while he played golf with investors. Every breakthrough I had made while he took credit in board meetings. I had timestamps. Emails to myself. Drafts saved on secure servers with metadata showing creation dates and author. Voice memos where I walked through complex problems, solving them in real time. Security footage from my lab showing me working alone for hours, days, weeks. I had built this company in shadows, and I had documented every single moment. The story had started 9 years ago in a coffee shop near the university where I was finishing my PhD in computer science. I was 26 years old, working on my dissertation about quantum encryption. Richard was 28, getting his MBA, charming and confident and so sure of himself. He had walked up to my table and asked what I was working on. I should have said nothing. I should have smiled politely and turned back to my laptop. But I was young and lonely and tired of being the only woman in my program who everyone treated like she didn't belong. So I told him. I explained quantum encryption in simple terms, the way I would explain it to my mom. I showed him my sketches and diagrams. I talked about the potential, the applications, the way this could change everything about data security. His eyes had lit up. Not with understanding, I realized later, but with opportunity. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. Fast, I knew, but he said he had never met anyone like me. He said I was brilliant. He said we could build something amazing together. I believed him. We got married 3 months after that. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. His family smiled at me, but I could see the questions in their eyes. What does he see in her? She's so quiet. So plain. Not the type we expected. I wore blue to the wedding. Royal blue, bright and bold. I had felt beautiful that day, even if his mother had suggested white would be more appropriate. The company started as my idea during our honeymoon. We were in Costa Rica, and I couldn't stop thinking about a security flaw I had identified in most corporate networks. I spent 3 days sketching out a solution while Richard explored the resort. When I showed him, he got excited. Really excited. He said we should start a company. He had the business knowledge, I had the technical skills. We would be partners. Equal partners. I said yes. That was my first mistake. Richard registered the company. Stellar Dynamics. He said the name came to him in a dream. I later found out he had stolen it from a science fiction novel. He set up the legal structure. He said he was protecting us, making sure everything was done right. I trusted him. I signed the papers he put in front of me, including the ones that made him CEO and public face of the company. I didn't mind. I wanted to build, not manage. I wanted to create, not attend board meetings. I wanted to solve impossible problems, not shake hands with investors. So Richard became the face of Stellar Dynamics, and I became the ghost in the machine. I worked from home at first, then from a small office, then from the lab I built in the basement of our first real building. I wrote code for 18 hours a day. I designed systems that security experts said couldn't exist. I created algorithms that made our competitors look like they were working with stone tools. And Richard took every bit of credit. He gave TED Talks about innovation. He accepted awards for genius. He did interviews where he explained his process, his vision, his breakthroughs. I watched it all happen and said nothing. Because I loved him. Because I thought we were a team. Because he came home every night and told me I was amazing, even if he never quite understood what I was actually doing. His family treated me like Richard's accessory. A smart accessory, sure, but still just something he had acquired. They praised him constantly. Richard is such a visionary. Richard is changing the world. We're so proud of Richard. I smiled and nodded and went back to my lab. Bethany had been different at first. She was Richard's younger sister, fresh out of college with a marketing degree. She needed a job and Richard suggested we hire her. I agreed. She seemed sweet, enthusiastic, genuinely interested in learning. I mentored her. I taught her about the technology, the industry, the vision behind what we were building. She was a quick learner, good with people in a way I never was. She became our director of marketing within 2 years. I gave her that promotion. I wrote the offer letter myself. She thanked Richard. 5 years into the marriage, Stellar Dynamics was worth $800 million. We had 300 employees. We had contracts with major corporations, government agencies, financial institutions. We were growing faster than anyone had predicted. And I was invisible. Business articles profiled Richard as a self-made genius. Industry leaders invited him to speak at conferences. Competitors tried to poach him with ridiculous offers. No one knew I existed. I should have been angry. I should have demanded recognition. But I had been raised to be humble, to not make waves, to support my partner. My mother had always said that a good woman builds her husband up, makes him successful, finds her joy in his achievements. So that's what I did. I built Richard up. I made him successful. I tried to find joy in his achievements. But the joy never came. Just exhaustion. Just the slow, creeping realization that I had made myself small so he could be big, and he hadn't even noticed the sacrifice. The affair started 8 months ago. I knew the day it began even though I didn't have proof yet. Richard came home different. Distracted. He looked at his phone more. He smiled at messages I couldn't see. He started working late again, but this time, no innovations appeared. No breakthroughs. No new ideas. Because he wasn't working. He was with her. Simone. 29 years old. New hire in the accounting department. Pretty in an obvious way, the kind of pretty that men like Richard noticed. She laughed at his jokes. She looked impressed when he talked. She made him feel like the genius everyone said he was. I found out 3 months ago. I had stopped by the office late one night to pick up some equipment. I saw his car in the parking lot. I saw her car next to it. I waited. They came out together at 11 p.m. He kissed her against her car. Not a brief kiss. Not an accident. A real kiss. The kind of kiss that said this had been going on for a while. I went home and threw up. Then I called Patricia. I need you to look at something, I said. All the legal documents for Stellar Dynamics. All the contracts. All the paperwork. I need to know exactly what I own. Patricia had been suspicious of Richard from the beginning. She had tried to get me to read the prenup more carefully. She had warned me about keeping my intellectual property separate. I had waved her off, saying Richard and I were a team. She didn't say I told you so when I called her that night. She just said, I'll have everything to you by tomorrow. The next day I learned the truth. Because of the prenup I had barely read and the intellectual property clauses Richard had definitely not read, I owned everything. Every patent was in my name. Every algorithm. Every piece of code. Even the company itself was structured in a way that made me the sole owner, with Richard as an employee, albeit a highly paid one. Patricia had protected me even when I wouldn't protect myself. What do you want to do? She asked. I want a divorce, I said. And I want him to know exactly what he's losing. We spent 3 months preparing. I documented everything. Every affair. Every lie. Every time he claimed credit for my work. I built an airtight case. And I waited. Richard asked for the divorce 2 weeks ago. He actually asked me. Sat me down in our living room and said he had met someone else. Said he hadn't meant for it to happen. Said he would always care about me, but he needed to follow his heart. I said okay. He looked surprised. Like he had expected tears, begging, drama. Instead, I just said okay, we should get divorced, I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. He relaxed. Said he was glad I was being mature about this. Said we could stay friends. Said he would make sure I was taken care of financially. I almost laughed at that part. The papers were ready in 3 days. Richard signed them without reading them carefully, just like the prenup. He was too excited about his new life with Simone. Too busy planning their future. He had no idea he was signing away any claim to the company he thought he had built. Yesterday at 9:47 a.m., I had fired Bethany. At 10 a.m., I had walked into the courthouse. At 11:30 a.m., I was divorced. By noon, Richard was married to Simone. By 2 p.m., his whole world was starting to crumble, and he didn't even know it yet. I closed my laptop and looked around my house. My house. The one I had bought with my money, put in my name, decorated to my taste even though Richard always said my style was too simple. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was mine. Tomorrow I would go to the office. I would walk through the front door for the first time as the public owner of Stellar Dynamics. I would call a meeting and tell the truth. But today I would rest. I would drink my coffee. I would work on my prototype. I would enjoy the last few hours before the storm really hit. Because when Richard found out the truth, when his family understood what they had lost, when the world learned who really built Stellar Dynamics, everything would change. And I was ready for it. More than ready. I was looking forward to it. The sun hadn't fully risen when my phone started ringing again. 6:47 a.m. Gerald Crawford. I was in my home gym, running on the treadmill, watching the news with subtitles on. Decline. He called back immediately. Decline. A text appeared. This is your last chance to fix this before we take legal action. I screenshot it and sent it to Patricia with a note. Add to evidence file. She responded instantly. Already awake. They've been emailing me since 5 a.m. This is entertaining. I increased my speed on the treadmill. 5 miles this morning. I needed to be sharp today. Another call. Richard's brother, Thomas. The one who worked in finance and thought that made him smarter than everyone else. The one who had told me at a family dinner that I should smile more if I wanted people to take me seriously. Decline. Then Bethany again. I could picture her in her expensive apartment, the one she bought with her bonuses from my company, probably surrounded by designer shopping bags and evidence of a lifestyle she could no longer afford. Decline. My phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. I didn't listen to it. Instead, I finished my run, showered, and dressed in a green suit. Emerald green. Professional. Powerful. The kind of outfit Richard had always said was too bright for me. I looked at myself in the mirror. 35 years old. African-American woman who had spent too long making herself smaller. Not anymore. Today I was taking up all the space I deserved. By the time I got to my car, I had 19 missed calls. The voicemails were piling up. I could see the desperation building. They had spent 12 hours trying to reach me, trying to intimidate me, trying to force me to back down. It wasn't working. The drive to Stellar Dynamics took 20 minutes. I had made this drive 1,000 times, but today felt different. Today I wasn't sneaking in through the back entrance to my basement lab. Today I was walking through the front door as the owner. My phone rang. Richard again. This time I answered. Naomi, finally, he said. His voice was strained. We need to talk. Now. Good morning to you too, Richard. Don't play games. What you did to Bethany was completely out of line. I don't know what kind of breakdown you're having, but you need to fix this. I'm not having a breakdown, I said calmly. I made a business decision. You don't make business decisions at Stellar Dynamics. I do. I'm the CEO. I pulled into my reserved parking spot. The one with my name on it. Naomi Bennett. Not Naomi Crawford. I had never taken his name at work, something his mother had complained about constantly. Actually, Richard, you should check your employment contract. You might find some interesting information there. What are you talking about? Read your contract. Then we can talk. I hung up. He called back immediately. I declined and turned off my phone's ringer completely. Inside the building, the receptionist looked surprised to see me. Miss Bennett? I didn't know you were coming in today. I work here, I said simply. Of course, I just meant, with everything happening. What's happening? She looked uncomfortable. The emails this morning. About the emergency board meeting. Mr. Crawford called it for 10 a.m. I smiled. Perfect. I'll be there. I took the elevator to the executive floor. I had rarely come up here. This was Richard's domain. The corner office with the view. The conference room with the expensive table. The walls covered with awards and photos of Richard shaking hands with important people. Patricia was waiting outside the conference room. She wore red head to toe. She looked like a lawyer ready for war. They're already inside, she said. Gerald, Thomas, and some lawyer they hired overnight. Bethany is on video call. Richard is on his way. He sounded frantic on the phone. Good. You ready for this? I've been ready for years. We walked into the conference room together. Gerald stood up, his face already red. You have some nerve showing up here after what you've done. I own this building, I said. I can show up whenever I want. You own nothing. My son built this company from the ground up. I sat down at the head of the table. Richard's spot. Did he? Tell me, Gerald, what exactly did Richard build? He created Stellar Dynamics. He developed the technology. He made this company worth billions. Patricia placed a folder on the table. These are the patents for Stellar Dynamics core technology. All 17 of them. Would you like to see whose name is on them? Gerald grabbed the folder. I watched his face change as he read through the documents. Patent after patent. Innovation after innovation. All filed in my name. All created by me. This doesn't mean anything, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Richard probably put your name on them for tax purposes. Feel free to believe that, I said. Now, about this board meeting you called. I'm confused about who gave you the authority to call a board meeting for a company you don't own. Richard owns this company. Patricia slid another folder across the table. These are the incorporation documents. The shareholder agreements. The company structure. Please show me where Richard's ownership is listed. Thomas grabbed the folder this time. He was the finance guy. He would understand what he was looking at faster than his father. His face went pale. This can't be right, he said. It's very right, Patricia said. Stellar Dynamics is wholly owned by Naomi Bennett. Richard Crawford is an employee. A very well-paid employee, but an employee nonetheless. That's impossible. Richard started this company. Did he? I asked. Or did I create the technology, file the patents, and build the systems while Richard played CEO? The door opened. Richard rushed in, still wearing yesterday's clothes. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good. Dad, what's going on? Your text said it was urgent. Gerald pointed at me. She claims she owns Stellar Dynamics. Claims? Patricia raised an eyebrow. I don't deal in claims. I deal in legal facts. Richard looked at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. Naomi, what is this? This is the truth, Richard. The truth you never bothered to learn because you were too busy taking credit for my work. Your work? I built this company. I pulled out my laptop and turned it toward him. On the screen was a video file. Me in my lab 3 years ago, walking through the encryption algorithm that had made Stellar Dynamics an industry leader. Time-stamped. Dated. Documented. Did you build this? I asked. He stared at the screen. I played another video. Me explaining the security protocol that had landed us our biggest government contract. Then another. Me coding the system that had won us industry awards. You want to see more? I asked. I have hundreds of hours of footage. Emails. Documents. Proof of every single innovation that made this company successful. And your name isn't on any of it. Richard sat down heavily. You recorded yourself working? I documented my work. Like any good scientist does. Why? Because I knew someday I might need proof. Turns out I was right. Bethany's face appeared on the conference room screen. She had been crying. Naomi, please. I'm sorry about what happened with Richard and Simone. I should have told you. But you can't destroy my career over this. I'm not destroying your career over the affair, I said. I'm firing you because you've been taking credit for work you didn't do. The marketing strategies that won awards? I designed them. The product launches that made you famous in the industry? I planned them. You were supposed to execute my vision, not claim it as your own. That's not true. I pulled up more files. Emails from me to her with detailed marketing plans. Strategy documents with my name in the metadata. Presentations she had given that were word-for-word copies of my notes. Still not true? I asked. She started crying harder. Gerald stood up. This is absurd. You're trying to rewrite history. Richard built this company and everyone knows it. Everyone believes it, I corrected. But belief and truth are different things. The truth is documented. Filed with the patent office. Registered with the state. Written into legal contracts that your son signed without reading. Richard's lawyer, a nervous man who looked like he had been pulled out of bed, cleared his throat. Ms. Bennett, my client would like to negotiate a settlement. For what? Patricia asked. For his contributions to the company. For the value he's added. For his reputation. His contributions? I laughed. Felt good to laugh. He gave speeches. He attended meetings. He played golf with investors. Those aren't contributions. Those are job duties which he was paid quite well to perform. He was CEO. He was an employee with a fancy title. Richard finally found his voice. You can't do this, Naomi. You can't just erase me from the company I built. I'm not erasing you. I'm revealing the truth. There's a difference. No one will believe you. I stood up and walked to the window. 17 floors below, people were arriving for work. People who thought they worked for Richard Crawford's company. People who were about to learn the truth. They'll believe the patents, I said. They'll believe the legal documents. They'll believe the footage and the emails and the evidence. You know what they won't believe? That a man who can barely code in Python built a quantum encryption company. I turned back to face him. You could have been honest, Richard. You could have said, my wife is the genius behind this company, and I'm proud to support her work. But you didn't. You took credit. You let your family treat me like I was lucky to be part of your success. You had an affair with a woman who thought she was marrying a billionaire genius. She didn't marry me for money. Really? Want to bet on that? Because in about 3 days, when the truth comes out, when everyone knows that you own nothing, that you created nothing, that you are nothing but a well-paid face for someone else's genius, we'll see how much she loves you. Richard's face crumbled. I had never seen him look so defeated. Part of me felt bad. The part that had loved him. The part that had believed in us. But that part was small now. Buried under years of being invisible. Silenced by months of betrayal. What do you want? Richard asked quietly. I want you to leave. Clean out your office. Return your company equipment. I'll honor your contract through the end of the month, and then your employment is terminated. You're firing me? Yes. From my own company? From my company. And it's not personal, Richard. It's just business. You taught me that. Gerald started to argue, but Patricia cut him off. My client has been more than generous. She could sue for fraud. For every speech he gave claiming her work. For every award he accepted. For every dollar he made pretending to be something he's not. But she's not. She's simply correcting the record and moving forward. We'll sue, Thomas said. For defamation. For wrongful termination. Try it, Patricia said. Discovery will be very interesting. We'll subpoena every interview, every speech, every claim Richard made about creating technology he didn't understand. We'll depose everyone who ever heard him take credit for Naomi's work. We'll turn this into a public spectacle that destroys what's left of his reputation." She smiled. "Or you can accept reality and walk away quietly. Your choice." The room fell silent. My phone buzzed. Even on silent, I could see the notifications piling up. More calls. More messages. More desperation. 55 calls in 12 hours. All from people who had never valued me. All from a family that had treated me like Richard's charity case. All from people who were now realizing exactly what they had lost. Not money. Not status. Me. They had lost me. And with me they had lost everything. The news spread faster than I expected. By noon, tech blogs were picking up the story. Shake-up at Stellar Dynamics. Founder's wife revealed as true inventor. By 2 p.m., major business publications were calling for comment. By 4 p.m., my phone had so many interview requests that I had to set up an automatic response. I sat in my lab watching the chaos unfold on social media. The tech community was having a field day. Some people were skeptical. Others were supportive. A few were outright hostile, calling me a liar, a bitter ex-wife, a woman trying to steal a man's legacy. But the patents didn't lie. The documents didn't lie. The evidence didn't lie. Patricia had released a carefully crafted statement with selected proof. Not everything, just enough to establish credibility. Patent filings with dates and signatures. Incorporation documents showing ownership structure. A few choice emails showing me explaining complex technical concepts to Richard in simple terms. The internet did the rest. Someone found a video of Richard giving a TED Talk about encryption. A computer science professor posted a detailed analysis proving Richard had no idea what he was talking about, had mixed up basic concepts, had made claims that were technically impossible. Another person found an interview where Richard couldn't answer a simple coding question, had laughed it off and said he was too busy with big-picture strategy to get into the weeds. The cracks in his genius facade were showing and people were starting to notice. Bethany's fall was even more spectacular. She had gone to the press. Big mistake. She did an interview with a tech industry publication, crying about how she had been wrongfully terminated, how she had built the marketing department from nothing, how she was being punished for her brother's divorce. Within hours, people who had worked with her started talking. A former employee posted on social media, "I worked under Bethany at Stellar Dynamics. Every campaign we launched was based on detailed plans that came from upstairs. We all assumed it was from the CEO. Now I'm wondering if it was actually from his wife." Another person chimed in, "I pitched Bethany an idea once. She rejected it. 3 months later, she presented the exact same idea as her own in a board meeting. I was told to keep quiet if I valued my job. Then someone leaked emails. Not from me, from someone else in the company. Messages showing Bethany taking credit for strategies she hadn't created. Presentations where she claimed innovations that had come from other team members. A pattern of theft and manipulation that went back years. The industry turned on her fast. Awards she had won were being questioned. Speaking engagements were canceled. Companies that had tried to recruit her were quietly pulling their offers. I watched it happen and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No guilt. Just a cold certainty that this was necessary. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered, curious. "Miss Bennett? This is Trevor Walsh from the Tech Innovation Forum. We would like to invite you to speak at our conference next month." The Tech Innovation Forum. The most prestigious event in the industry. Richard had spoken there 3 times. I had watched from the audience, listening to him explain my work to people who didn't know I existed. "What would you like me to speak about?" I asked. "Your work. The real story behind Stellar Dynamics. We think it's important that the truth is heard." "I'll think about it. We're prepared to offer you keynote speaker status." "And Miss Bennett? We owe you an apology. We gave your ex-husband a platform for years. We should have done our research better." I hung up and added the invitation to my growing list of opportunities. 6 speaking requests. 4 interview offers. 2 potential board positions at other tech companies. 1 venture capital firm asking if I wanted to consult on their investments. The world was finally seeing me. And they wanted more. Patricia called at 6 p.m. "You need to see this." She sent me a link to a legal filing. Gerald Crawford was suing me for defamation and tortious interference. He claimed I had damaged Richard's reputation and destroyed Bethany's career through lies and manipulation. "This is good for us," Patricia said. "Everything goes into public record now. Every patent. Every document. Every piece of evidence. They just gave us permission to bury them. How long until trial? Months. Maybe a year. But discovery starts immediately. They'll have to produce evidence of Richard's contributions. They'll have to prove Bethany's work was her own. They'll have to back up every claim with documentation. They can't. Exactly. My guess? They dropped the suit in 6 weeks when they realize how bad this looks. Another call came through. My mother. I had been avoiding her since the divorce. I answered. Hi, Mom. Naomi, what is happening? I'm seeing your name all over the news. I'm telling the truth. About Richard? About the company? Yes. There was a long pause. Then, I always knew he was taking credit for your work. I just didn't know how much. You knew. Baby, I'm your mother. I know you. I saw you working all hours, solving problems he couldn't understand. I saw the way he talked about the company like it was all his idea. I just thought you were okay with it. I thought I was too. And now I'm done being invisible. She laughed. Good. It's about time. That green suit you wore on the news this morning? Beautiful. Very you. Bright and bold. We talked for an hour. She told me stories about my childhood, about how I had always been the smartest person in the room but never wanted anyone to notice. About how I had hidden my intelligence to make other people comfortable. About how she had worried I would spend my whole life making myself small. You're not small anymore, she said. I'm proud of you. After we hung up, I cried. Not sad tears. Relief. Like something had broken open inside me and I could finally breathe. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. You've destroyed my family. Bethany. I blocked the number. Another text, different number. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are. Richard. Block. Another. You're a vindictive woman who can't handle her husband moving on. Simone. I almost laughed. She was texting me? The woman who had slept with my husband was calling me vindictive? I blocked her too. Then I did something I had wanted to do for months. I posted on social media for the first time in years. Just a simple statement. My name is Naomi Bennett. I created the technology behind Stellar Dynamics. I filed the patents. I wrote the code. I built the systems. I spent years working in silence while others took credit. Today I'm speaking up. Not for revenge. Not for attention. For truth. And for every woman who has ever made herself small so someone else could be big. You don't have to hide anymore. Neither do I. The post went viral in 20 minutes. Comments poured in. Thousands of them. Women sharing their own stories of being overlooked, undervalued, erased. Men apologizing for times they had taken credit or stayed silent when they should have spoken up. Industry leaders pledging to do better, to look harder, to question the stories they had been told. One comment stood out. I worked with Richard Crawford at a conference. He couldn't answer basic questions about his own technology. I thought he was just having an off day. Now I know the truth. I'm sorry, Naomi. We should have questioned this years ago. I screenshotted and saved it. More evidence. More truth. By 8 p.m., Stellar Dynamics stock had jumped 12%. Investors were excited. The real genius was still with the company. The technology was safe. The future was bright. Richard's lawyer called Patricia. They wanted to settle. Drop the lawsuit. Sign NDAs. Make this go away quietly. No, I told Patricia. You sure? They're offering a decent number for Richard to walk away. I don't want his silence. I want the truth. All of it. Public and permanent. This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly. I'm just not hiding from it anymore. At 10 p.m., I received an email from Bethany. A real one this time, not a text. Long and rambling and desperate. Naomi, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But please understand I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to be successful. I wanted to make my family proud. Richard always made it seem like the company was his idea, his work. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Please give me another chance. I'll do anything. I'll work for minimum wage. I'll start over in a junior position. I'll tell everyone the truth. Just please don't destroy my career. I'm begging you. I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back. Bethany, you knew. Maybe not everything, but you knew enough. You knew I was the one in the lab at midnight. You knew I was the one solving problems. You knew Richard couldn't code. You chose to believe the comfortable lie instead of the uncomfortable truth. You took credit for my marketing strategies because it was easier than giving me recognition. You stayed silent about his affair because you didn't want to rock the boat. Every choice you made was about protecting your comfort, your status, your career. Now you face the consequences. I'm not destroying your career. You did that yourself. You just didn't think you'd ever have to pay for it. I hit send and blocked her email. My phone showed 63 missed calls now. The number had grown throughout the day as more people realized what was happening. Richard's extended family, business associates, people who had benefited from my work without knowing my name. All of them wanting to fix this, control this, make me back down. None of them understanding that I was done backing down. I looked around my lab, the space where I had created everything. The room where I had spent thousands of hours solving impossible problems while the world gave credit to someone else. This was my empire. Built in shadows, yes, but mine. And now everyone would know it. Simone filed for annulment on day 5. The news came through Patricia, who could barely contain her amusement. She claims fraud. Says Richard misrepresented his financial situation and ownership of Stellar Dynamics. Her lawyer filed this morning. I was in a meeting with my actual board of directors, the people who had always known the truth about my ownership. They were strategizing our next moves, discussing how to handle the media attention, planning the future. How is Richard taking it? I asked. According to court documents, he's living in a hotel. The house you shared was in your name. His condo downtown also your name. Turns out you own more than you remembered. I actually had forgotten about the condo. I had bought it as an investment property years ago, and Richard had asked to use it as his office space. I had said yes and forgotten about it. His car? I asked. Leased through the company, which you own. Would you like me to terminate the lease? No. Let him keep it for now. I'm not petty. One of my board members, an older woman named Dr. Sharon Hughes, laughed. You're better than me. I would have had it repoed the first day. We continued the meeting. We discussed expanding into new markets, hiring more engineers, acquiring a smaller competitor that had interesting technology, growing the company that I had built, this time with my name on everything. After the meeting, I checked my email. Another message from Simone's lawyer, this one sent directly to me. Ms. Bennett, my client would like to speak with you privately. She believes you both have been victimized by Mr. Crawford's deception and thinks a conversation might be mutually beneficial. I deleted it. Simone and I had nothing to discuss. She had made her choices. Now she could live with them. But I was curious about how she was handling this, so I did what anyone would do. I looked at her social media. Her accounts had gone private, but screenshots were everywhere. She had posted a long message yesterday, claiming she had been deceived by a con artist, and that she was as much a victim as anyone. People weren't buying it. The comments were brutal. You knew he was married. You chose to be with a married man. Now you're shocked he's a liar? Consequences are finally finding you. Someone had posted photos from her wedding to Richard. She wore red, the same red she had worn to the courthouse. In the photos she looked radiant, happy, victorious. Now those same photos were being shared with mocking captions. When you marry for money but find out there isn't any. The face of instant regret. I felt nothing looking at them. No satisfaction. No pity. Just the distant observation that this was what happened when you built your life on someone else's lies. My phone rang. Unknown number. I had been getting a lot of those. Miss Bennett? This is Jennifer Wu from Tech Venture Capital. I wanted to reach out about a potential opportunity. Tech Venture was one of the biggest venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. They had funded some of the most successful companies in the past decade. We're very impressed with your work, Jennifer continued. We'd like to discuss potential investments in Stellar Dynamics or your future ventures. Would you be available for a meeting? Stellar Dynamics isn't looking for outside investment. We understand. But we're interested in building a relationship with you. We believe you're one of the most innovative minds in the industry, and we want to support your work going forward. We scheduled a lunch meeting for next week. After I hung up, 3 more venture capital firms called with similar offers. The tech world was recalibrating. Richard Crawford had been a fraud. Naomi Bennett was the real deal. And everyone wanted a piece of the real deal. Patricia called at 3 p.m. Simone's pregnant. I actually dropped my phone. I picked it up quickly. What? Her lawyer just filed an amended annulment request. She's claiming emotional distress due to the pregnancy. Says Richard assured her he was wealthy and could support a family. Is it his? The timeline matches. She's about 8 weeks along. I sat down. Richard was going to be a father. With her. With the woman he left me for. I waited for the pain to hit. The jealousy. The anger. The sense of loss. Instead I felt relief. I had wanted children. Richard had always said we should wait. Build the company first. Establish ourselves. There would be time later. Later never came. And now I understood why. He had never wanted children with me. He had been planning his exit for months, maybe longer. He had been imagining a different future with someone else. And now he had it. A future with no money, no career, no reputation, and a pregnant wife who had only married him for what she thought he had. Naomi? You still there? Patricia asked. I'm here. Does this change anything legally? No. The prenup is ironclad. He has no claim to your assets and neither does she. The child won't either. Good. You okay? I'm better than okay. I'm free. That evening I went to my favorite restaurant. The little place downtown that served amazing food and didn't care about celebrity or status. I wore a blue dress, bright blue, and sat at the bar with a book. The bartender recognized me. You're that tech genius everyone's talking about. I'm the woman who created some technology, yes. What you did was amazing. Standing up for yourself like that. I just told the truth. Still, takes courage. He poured me a glass of wine. This is on the house. For inspiration. I smiled and accepted the drink. A woman approached me an hour later. Mid-30s, wearing professional clothes, carrying a briefcase. I'm sorry to bother you, she said. But I had to tell you. I'm a patent attorney and I've been following your story. What you've done is incredible. I represent several women inventors who have had their work stolen or undervalued. Would you be willing to speak with them? Maybe share your experience. Of course. She gave me her card. We exchanged contact information. She told me stories about her clients, brilliant women whose male partners or colleagues had taken credit for their innovations. Women who had stayed silent because they were afraid of losing everything. You gave them hope, she said. You showed them it's possible to fight back and win. After she left, I sat at the bar thinking about that. Oh, I had never thought of myself as inspirational. I had just been protecting what was mine. But maybe that was enough. Maybe standing up for yourself was always inspirational, even when it felt like simple survival. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. Richard. I stared at the message. I could respond. I could tell him he destroyed his own life. I could point out that he had choices, that he had made decisions, that consequences were not the same as destruction. Instead, I deleted the message and blocked the number. He didn't deserve my energy. He didn't deserve my attention. He didn't deserve any more of my time. I finished my wine and went home to my quiet house. My house. My space. My life. Tomorrow I had another interview scheduled. Forbes wanted to feature me in their 30 Most Innovative Women in Tech issue. Even though I was 35, they said I qualified because my innovations had happened in my 20s, I just hadn't been recognized for them until now. I had said yes to the interview. To all the interviews. Because for years, I had let Richard speak for me, explain me, represent me to the world. Now I would speak for myself. And the world was listening. 3 months after the divorce, I walked into the Tech Innovation Forum as the keynote speaker. The same conference where Richard had spoken 3 times. The same stage where he had explained my encryption algorithms to audiences who believed he had created them. Today I stood in that exact spot wearing a red pantsuit. Bright, bold, impossible to ignore. The room was packed. 2,000 people. Industry leaders, investors, journalists, competitors. All there to hear the real story. I started with a question. How many of you believed Richard Crawford was a genius? Almost every hand went up. How many of you have ever actually spoken to him about the technical details of his work? Most hands went down. How many of you ever questioned whether the story you were told was true? No hands remained raised. I smiled. That's the problem. We don't question the stories we're comfortable with. A confident man taking credit for innovation? That's a story we know. A story we accept. A woman working in silence while her husband claims her achievements? That's a story we don't want to see. I spent the next 45 minutes walking through my work. Real technical details. The actual innovations. The problems I had solved and how I had solved them. I showed code. I explained algorithms. I proved, beyond any doubt, that I knew exactly what I was talking about. Then I showed videos of Richard trying to explain the same concepts. Fumbling over terminology. Making basic errors. Clearly reading from scripts he didn't understand. The room was silent. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I'm here to change the narrative. To show you what you missed. To make you uncomfortable enough that next time, you question the easy story. You look deeper. You ask harder questions. You don't assume the person on stage is the person who did the work. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterwards, dozens of people approached me. CEOs wanting to collaborate. Investors offering funding for future projects. Women thanking me through tears for giving them courage. One person stood out. Dr. James Morrison, the founder of a major research institute I had admired for years. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I gave Richard an award 3 years ago. An award that should have been yours. I'd like to correct that publicly." "You don't have to do that." "I do. We all do. The industry needs to acknowledge what happened. Otherwise, nothing changes." We talked for 20 minutes. He invited me to join his institute's advisory board, to mentor young researchers, to help create policies ensuring proper attribution of work. I said yes, because this was bigger than me and Richard now. This was about changing systems, preventing the next brilliant woman from spending years in shadows while someone else took the spotlight. The next day, I visited my new office at Stellar Dynamics. Not the basement lab, the executive suite, the corner office that used to be Richard's. I had redecorated completely. Out went his heavy furniture and dark colors. In came clean lines, bright colors, and lots of natural light. The walls displayed my patents, my awards, the ones being reissued in my name, my vision for the company's future. My new executive team was waiting. I had restructured everything, hired people I trusted, brought in diverse voices, created a company culture based on transparency and proper attribution. "Let's talk about the next 5 years," I said. "We're going to triple our revenue. We're going to expand into markets we haven't touched yet. We're going to build technology that changes everything. And everyone who contributes will get credit. Clear, public, undeniable credit." We worked for 6 hours straight. Planning, strategizing, building. This was what I had always wanted. Not the fame or the recognition. The ability to create freely, to build something meaningful, to push boundaries without someone else claiming my achievements. Patricia called at 6 p.m. The lawsuit settled. Gerald dropped all claims. Richard signed a comprehensive NDA and non-compete. He can't work in tech for 5 years, can't claim any connection to Stellar Dynamics, can't speak publicly about your marriage or the company. What did he get? Enough money to live on if he's careful. More than he deserves. And Bethany? She's working at a small marketing firm in Nebraska. Entry-level position. They know her history. They're giving her a second chance, but she's starting from the bottom. I felt nothing about that either. Bethany had made her choices. She would live with them. Simone had the baby, Patricia added. A girl. She's been posting on social media about single motherhood and learning who your real friends are. Richard isn't involved? He sees the baby, but they're not together. He's living in a studio apartment, working as a consultant for a small firm. Makes about what he paid his assistant at Stellar Dynamics. The fall from grace was complete. Richard Crawford, the supposed genius, was now just another guy struggling to pay rent. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of thinking about him. Tired of this chapter of my life. "I'm done," I told Patricia. "No more updates about them. I don't want to know." "You sure?" "Positive. I'm building something new now. They're not part of it." That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a vacation. Just 3 days in a small cabin by a lake. No phone calls. No emails. No interviews or meetings or obligations. Just me, some books, and silence. I spent the first day sleeping. Years of exhaustion catching up. Years of carrying weight I didn't know I was carrying. The second day I hiked. Long trails through forests, breathing clean air, remembering what it felt like to exist without performance or pressure. The third day I sat by the lake and thought about the future. Who I wanted to be. What I wanted to build. How I wanted to use this second chance. I thought about dating eventually, maybe. But not yet. I needed to remember who I was without being someone's wife first. I thought about children. The possibility was still there, though it looked different now. Maybe adoption. Maybe fostering. Maybe just mentoring young people and calling that enough. I thought about my mother's words. "You're not small anymore." She was right. I had taken up space. Claimed my achievements. Demanded recognition. And the world hadn't collapsed. Instead, it had expanded. On my drive home, I stopped at a store and bought a painting. Abstract, bright blues and greens, full of movement and life. I hung it in my living room, the first piece of art I had chosen without worrying whether Richard would like it. It looked perfect. My phone had 67 messages when I turned it back on. Interview requests. Speaking invitations. partnership offers. People wanting my time, my knowledge, my expertise. I responded to each one carefully. Yes to the ones that aligned with my values. No to the ones that felt exploitative. Maybe to the ones that needed more thought. I was learning to value my time. To understand that I didn't owe everyone access to me just because they asked. One message stood out. From Trevor at the Tech Innovation Forum. Naomi, we've had incredible feedback from your keynote. Would you consider being the chair of our conference next year? Help us reshape the event to be more inclusive and accurate in how we recognize innovation. I called him back. I'm interested, but I have conditions. Name them. Mandatory verification of all speaker credentials. Proper attribution requirements. A committee dedicated to finding and highlighting innovators who work behind the scenes. And 50% of keynote speakers must be women or underrepresented minorities. Done. All of it. When can you start? We talked for an hour. Planning. Dreaming. Building something better. This was my new life. Not defined by who I had been married to or what had been taken from me. Defined by what I was creating, who I was becoming, the future I was building with my own hands. That night, I went to bed early. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with a young woman who had reached out about her research being stolen by her advisor. The day after, I was speaking at a university about intellectual property protection. The week after that, I was meeting with lawmakers about better attribution laws in the tech industry. I was busy. Busier than I had ever been. But this time, I was busy building my own legacy. Speaking in my own voice. Taking up all the space I had always deserved. And it felt right. Finally, completely, perfectly right. 6 months after the divorce, Richard's family made one last attempt to reclaim what they thought they had lost. The lawsuit was different this time. Not defamation or wrongful termination, but a claim that I had manipulated Richard into signing documents he didn't understand, that I had taken advantage of his trust. Patricia called it what it was, desperation. They're arguing he was incapacitated when he signed the prenup and incorporation documents, she explained over lunch. Too drunk to understand what he was agreeing to. He signed the prenup the night before our wedding. He had been drinking at his bachelor party. Exactly. They're claiming you exploited that. Presented complex legal documents to an impaired person. I set down my fork. He had 3 lawyers review those documents. His lawyers. They all said it was fair. I know. I have their sign-offs. But his family is arguing those lawyers didn't explain things properly, that Richard trusted you and you betrayed that trust. By protecting my intellectual property? By ensuring I owned what I created. By not making it crystal clear that he was signing away any claim to the company. They're painting you as a manipulative mastermind who trapped their poor innocent son. I laughed. It was absurd. Richard had lawyers, accountants, financial advisors. He had every resource available to understand what he was signing. He just hadn't cared enough to read carefully. When does discovery start? I asked. Next week. And Naomi, this is going to get personal. They're going to dig into everything. Your relationship. Your marriage. Private moments. They're trying to paint a picture of you as controlling and deceptive. Let them try. I have nothing to hide. Discovery was brutal. Richard's lawyers requested everything. Emails between us. Text messages. Financial records. Photos. Personal journals. They wanted to build a narrative of manipulation, to show that I had been plotting this from the beginning. What they found instead was the opposite. They found emails from me to Richard asking him to review documents before signing. Texts reminding him to read contracts carefully. Voice messages where I explained complex business decisions in simple terms and asked if he understood. They found evidence of me trying to include him, educate him, protect him from making mistakes. They also found evidence of his dismissiveness. His responses to my careful explanations were often just, whatever you think is best, or just handle it. Messages showing he couldn't be bothered with the details. Proof that he had actively chosen not to pay attention. Patricia was thrilled. They just handed us everything we need to destroy their case. But the worst evidence came from an unexpected source. Richard's own emails. His lawyers had requested access to his old email accounts, thinking they would find proof of my manipulation. Instead, they found messages Richard had sent to friends and family members. Messages where he bragged about letting me do all the work, while he enjoyed the perks. Messages where he complained that I was too focused on the technical stuff, and not enough on playing the CEO's wife role. Messages where he told his brother that the prenup didn't matter because it's just a formality and I can always contest it if we divorce. Messages where he discussed the affair with Simone months before I found out, calling it exciting and a breath of fresh air after being married to someone so boring. Patricia leaked selected messages to the press. Not all of them, just enough to shift the narrative completely. The tech blogs went crazy. Richard Crawford's own words reveal truth about marriage. Emails show Crawford bragged about taking credit for wife's work. Text messages prove Crawford planned to contest prenup. Public opinion, which had been somewhat divided, solidified firmly in my favor. The comments sections were brutal for Richard's family. They're really trying to claim he was the victim? His own emails prove he was using her. This is what happens when entitled people face consequences. They sue. She protected herself from a man who was already planning to betray her. That's not manipulation, that's intelligence. 1 week into discovery, Gerald Crawford requested a private meeting. No lawyers. Just him and me. Patricia advised against it. He's going to try to manipulate you. Make you feel guilty. Convince you to settle. Let him try. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. I arrived early, ordered tea, and sat by the window. Gerald walked in looking older than I remembered. The stress was showing. The lawsuit was expensive, and his lawyers had probably told him they were going to lose. He sat down across from me without ordering anything. "Naomi," he said, "this has gone too far." "Has it?" "You're destroying my family. Richard can barely find work. Bethany is working a job that doesn't use any of her skills. Our family name is being dragged through the mud." "I didn't drag your family name anywhere. I just told the truth about who created what. You could have handled this privately. Without the media circus." "I tried to handle it privately. I tried for years. I stayed silent while Richard took credit for my work. I smiled at family dinners while you all treated me like I was lucky to be part of your family. I accepted being invisible because I loved your son and thought we were building something together." "You were building something together?" "No. I was building. He was performing. There's a difference." Gerald leaned back. "What do you want? Money? We'll pay you to drop the lawsuit, sign an NDA, let this go." "You're suing me, Gerald?" "Not the other way around." "Then what will it take for you to settle? To make this go away?" I looked at him. Really looked. I saw a man who had spent his whole life believing his son was special, exceptional, destined for greatness. A man who had built his identity around being the father of a genius. And now that genius had been revealed as a fraud. Not even a fraud, really. Just a mediocre man who had married someone brilliant and taken credit for her brilliance. "I want you to tell the truth," I said. "About what?" "About everything. I want you to admit publicly that I created the technology behind Stellar Dynamics. That Richard was never the genius you claimed he was. That your family benefited from my work while treating me like I was beneath you. That's ridiculous. I can't do that. Then we have nothing to discuss." I stood up to leave. "Wait," Gerald said. "Please." I sat back down. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Is it really just about credit? About recognition?" "It's about respect. It's about the truth. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to the next woman who trusts the wrong person. Richard loved you. Richard loved what I could do for him. That's not the same thing. He made a mistake. The affair, I mean. But everyone makes mistakes. You didn't have to destroy him over it." "I didn't destroy him. I removed myself from his life and took what was mine. If his entire existence was built on claiming my achievements, then yes, removing myself destroyed that existence. But that's not my fault. That's his." Gerald was quiet for a long time. "Then, what happens to him now? To my son? That's not my concern. He has a daughter now. A baby girl. She deserves better than a father who can't find work, can't support his family. Then maybe he should have thought about that before he cheated on his wife, stole credit for her work, and built a life based on lies. You're really not going to help him." "Why would I?" "Because you loved him once." I stood up again. This time I didn't sit back down. I loved someone who didn't exist. The man I thought Richard was, the partner I believed I had, that person was never real. I created him in my mind because I wanted to believe in us. But reality doesn't care what I wanted to believe. And neither do I anymore. I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back. 2 days later, Richard's family dropped the lawsuit. No settlement. No NDA. No agreement. Just a quiet withdrawal of all claims with a statement that said they were focusing on family matters. Patricia called it a total victory. I called it the end of a chapter. But the reckoning wasn't quite over. The business world had been watching. And they had questions. Questions about how many other Richard Crawfords were out there. How many people taking credit for work they didn't do. How many brilliant minds working in shadows while someone else claimed the spotlight. Universities started investigating. Companies began auditing their patents and publications. The tech industry, confronted with an uncomfortable truth, started looking at itself differently. I received dozens of messages from women who said they had been in similar situations. Wives who had done the coding while husbands presented at conferences. Research assistants whose advisors published their work under their own names. Engineers whose managers took credit for their innovations. Some of them were ready to fight back. Others were afraid. All of them were tired. I started a foundation. The Invisible Innovators Project. Focused on helping people prove their contributions, reclaim their work, and get proper recognition. We hired lawyers to help with patent disputes. Publicists to tell true stories. Investigators to document evidence. Within 3 months, we had helped 17 women reclaim credit for their innovations. The media loved it. I did interview after interview, not about my own story anymore, but about the pattern. The system. The way intellectual property theft happened in plain sight because we were conditioned not to question certain narratives. Richard's name came up in some of these interviews. I spoke about him factually, without emotion. He became a case study. An example. A cautionary tale. I didn't hate him. I didn't think about him enough to hate him. He was just a chapter in my story. A chapter that had taught me important lessons about trust, worth, and the danger of making yourself small. And now I was writing new chapters. Better chapters. Chapters where I was the author, the protagonist, and the hero. Chapters where my name appeared in bold letters on every page. 8 months after I fired her, Bethany showed up at my office. My assistant called me first. "There's a woman here to see you. Bethany Crawford. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." I almost said no. Almost had security escort her out. But curiosity won. "Send her in." Bethany looked different. Smaller somehow. She wore a plain outfit, nothing designer. Her hair was simpler. The confidence she used to carry was gone, replaced by something that looked like humility but might just be defeat. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. "You have 5 minutes." She sat down across from my desk. The desk that used to be Richard's. The office she used to visit casually like she owned the place. "I've been in therapy," she started. "Working through a lot of things. And my therapist said I needed to apologize to you. For real. Not just to make myself feel better, but because you deserve to hear it." "I'm listening." I knew. Not everything, but enough. I knew you were brilliant. I knew Richard couldn't code. I knew the ideas came from somewhere and it wasn't from him. I just never let myself think about it too hard because it was easier not to. She looked at her hands. When Richard would present at conferences, I would see him struggle with technical questions. I would watch him deflect, change the subject, make jokes. And I knew something was wrong. But I didn't ask questions because the truth would have been uncomfortable. "So you chose comfort over honesty." "Yes. And I chose it over and over again." When he started the affair with Simone, I knew about it after the second time they met. I saw them together. He told me it was nothing serious, just a distraction, that he still loved you but needed something exciting. My jaw tightened. "And you said nothing." I told myself it wasn't my place. That it was between you and him. That I couldn't betray my brother. But really, I was protecting myself. If I told you, it would have caused a family crisis. I would have had to choose sides. Things would have been messy. "So you let me walk around looking like a fool while everyone else knew." "Yes." She was crying now. "And I'm so sorry. You were kind to me. You mentored me. You gave me opportunities one didn't deserve. And I repaid you by staying silent when you needed someone to tell you the truth." I waited for the anger to come. The satisfaction of seeing her broken. The vindication of hearing her admit what she had done. Instead, I just felt tired. "What do you want from me, Bethany?" "Nothing. I don't want my job back. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did. That I'm ashamed of it. That I'm trying to be better." "How's that going?" "It's hard. I'm making barely enough to pay rent. I'm learning what it's like to actually earn respect instead of having it handed to me because of my last name. I'm starting over in a way I never thought I would have to. And you think I should feel sorry for you? No. I think you should know that you were right to fire me. That I wasn't just fired for knowing about the affair. I was fired because I was a fraud too. I took credit for your marketing strategies. I let people believe I was this brilliant strategist when I was really just executing your vision." She wiped her eyes. I've spent 8 months thinking about why I did that. And I think it's because I always felt less smart than Richard, less accomplished than my parents wanted me to be. So when I had the chance to be seen as successful, I grabbed it. Even if it meant stealing someone else's work. Do you know how many women do the work while men take the credit? I asked. Do you understand that you could have been different? You could have been the one who stood up, who told the truth, who refused to participate in the lie. I know that now. But you didn't know it then. Because knowing it then would have cost you something. She nodded. You're right. We sat in silence. I looked at her and saw something I recognized. Not the entitled woman who had taken my work. Not the sister-in-law who had betrayed me. Just a person who had made terrible choices because she was afraid of being ordinary. What are you doing now? I asked. Working in marketing for a small firm in Nebraska. They know my history. They hired me anyway, said everyone deserves a second chance. I'm doing entry-level work. Learning to actually do the job instead of just taking credit for it. Do you like it? Sometimes. It's humbling. But I'm learning what it feels like to actually earn something. I stood up and walked to the window. 17 floors below, the city moved on. People going to work, building their lives, making their choices. I accept your apology, I said. Not because I forgive you completely, but because I understand that people are complicated. You made terrible choices. You hurt me. You betrayed my trust. But you're also trying to do better, and that counts for something. Thank you. But Bethany, I need you to understand something. You don't get to feel better just because you apologized. You don't get absolution just because you feel bad about what you did. The work of becoming better is hard and it lasts forever. You don't get to do it for 8 months and call it done. I know. Do you? Because the easy thing is to apologize and move on. The hard thing is to actually change. To recognize when you're falling into old patterns. To speak up when it's uncomfortable. To give credit where credit is due even when you get nothing for it. She stood up. You're right. And I'm trying. That's all I can say. Then keep trying. And when you see someone else taking credit for work they didn't do, speak up. When you see a woman being erased from her own story, say something. Use what happened to you, what you did, to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else. I will. She walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, Richard is miserable. He knows he destroyed his life. He knows he lost the best thing that ever happened to him. Not the company. You. That's not worth anything to me. I know. But I thought you should know anyway. After she left, I sat in my office thinking about forgiveness. I had forgiven her in a way, but it wasn't the kind of forgiveness that restored relationship or trust. It was just the kind that let me stop carrying anger around. She had made her choices. I had made mine. We were both living with the consequences. My phone rang. My mother. I saw Bethany leaving your building on social media, she said. Someone had apparently photographed Bethany crying in the lobby and posted it. Everything okay? She apologized. Did you accept it? I acknowledged it. I'm not sure that's the same thing. Good girl. You don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they feel bad. We talked for a while. She told me about her book club, her garden, her life. Normal things. Comforting things. You sound happy, she said. Really happy. Not just okay, but genuinely happy. I am. Good. You deserve it. After everything you've been through, you deserve to be happy. After we hung up, I looked around my office. Photos on the wall from speaking engagements. Awards with my name on them. Patents filed in my name. Evidence of a life I had built in the open, not in shadows. I was happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy. Not because Richard was suffering. Not because his family had faced consequences. Not because Bethany was working an entry-level job. But because I had found myself. The person I was when I wasn't performing for someone else. When I wasn't making myself small. When I wasn't hiding my brilliance to make someone else comfortable. I had found my voice. My power. My place. And it turned out I liked who I was when I took up space. 1 year after the divorce, Business Insider published a 10,000-word investigative piece titled, The Woman Behind the Curtain. How Naomi Bennett Built a billion-dollar company while her husband took the credit. The article was thorough, devastating, and meticulously sourced. The journalist had interviewed dozens of people. Former employees who had seen me working late while Richard attended parties. Industry experts who had noticed inconsistencies in Richard's technical knowledge. Investors who had been impressed by my few appearances at meetings but told to direct all communication through Richard. They had obtained emails, recordings, documentation. They had traced the timeline of every major innovation at Stellar Dynamics back to me. They had found the patterns that should have been obvious but that everyone had missed because the narrative of brilliant male CEO was easier to believe than brilliant female inventor hiding behind her husband. The article went viral. Within 24 hours, it had been shared millions of times. Every major news outlet picked it up. Tech blogs dissected it. Business schools announced they would be using it as a case study. I did 5 interviews that week. Not to defend myself or prove anything more. Just to talk about what came next. What do you want people to learn from your story? One journalist asked. Question the narratives you're given, I said. When someone is praised for brilliance, ask for proof. When someone takes all the credit, look for whose work is behind it. Don't assume the person on stage is the person who did the work. Do you have any regrets? I regret staying silent for so long. I regret thinking that love meant making myself invisible. I regret all the years I spent believing that my worth was tied to making someone else successful. What would you tell other women in similar situations? Document everything. Protect yourself legally. Don't trust that being right will be enough. You need proof, evidence, documentation. And then use it. Don't wait for permission to claim what's yours. The response was overwhelming. Women reached out to share their stories. Some were ready to fight. Others were still afraid. All of them were tired of being invisible. The Invisible Innovators Project expanded. We hired more lawyers, more investigators, more publicists. We started a legal defense fund. We created resources for documenting intellectual property. We built a network of support for people trying to reclaim their work. Within 6 months, we had helped 63 people prove their contributions and receive proper credit. Some cases were settled quietly. Others became public battles. All of them mattered. Industry groups started reaching out. They wanted to partner with the foundation. They wanted to create new standards for attribution. They wanted to fix the systems that had allowed people like Richard to thrive. I spoke at conferences about building ethical tech companies, about creating cultures where credit was properly assigned, about the importance of transparency in innovation. One presentation stood out. I was speaking at a major university, and a young woman raised her hand during Q&A. My research advisor is taking credit for my work, she said. Publishing papers with my data but barely mentioning my contribution. I'm afraid if I speak up, I'll lose my position. What should I do? The room went silent. Everyone was watching me, waiting for my answer. Document everything, I said. Keep copies of all your work with timestamps. Email yourself descriptions of your contributions. Keep a detailed lab notebook. Build your evidence file. But what if that's not enough? What if he's too powerful? Then you fight anyway. Because the alternative is spending your whole career watching someone else get credit for your brilliance. And I can tell you from experience that cost is too high. She nodded, tears in her eyes. After the presentation, she came up to me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to document everything and then file a complaint. Good. And if you need help, the foundation can connect you with resources. Thank you for showing us it's possible to fight back and win. I hugged her. You were always going to be brilliant. Now you just get to be brilliant with your name on your work. The article led to other changes too. Tech companies started auditing their attribution practices. Universities implemented new policies about intellectual property and proper citation. Industry organizations created awards specifically recognizing behind-the-scenes innovators. The conversation had shifted. People were asking different questions now. Not just who built this, but who actually built this? Richard became a cautionary tale. Business ethics classes studied his case. Management books used him as an example of what not to do. His name became synonymous with taking credit for others' work. I felt nothing about that. He had made his choices. These were the consequences. 2 years after the divorce, I received an invitation to speak at the same TED conference where Richard had given his famous talk about innovation. The organizers wanted me to tell the real story, to set the record straight on that same stage. I accepted. I wore a green dress. Bright emerald green. The color of growth, renewal, taking up space. I walked onto that stage and looked out at the audience. Thousands of people. Millions more watching online. 5 years ago, my ex-husband stood on this stage and gave a talk about innovation. I began. He talked about the encryption technology that made Stellar Dynamics successful. He explained the process, the breakthroughs, the vision. He received a standing ovation. I paused. Everything he said was based on my work. Work I had done in a basement lab while he prepared for speaking engagements like this one. Work I had created, refined, and perfected while he took the credit. The audience was silent. I'm not here to attack him. I'm here to talk about a bigger problem. The problem of invisible labor. Of uncredited contribution. Of brilliant people working in shadows while someone else stands in the spotlight. I spent 18 minutes talking about systems. About culture. About the ways we condition women to be modest and men to be confident. About how those conditioning patterns create situations where credit flows to the person who claims it loudest, not the person who earned it. I talked about solutions. About documentation and transparency. About creating cultures where asking for credit isn't seen as arrogant but as appropriate. About building systems that make it harder to steal intellectual property and easier to prove contribution. The standing ovation lasted 7 minutes. Afterwards, the TED organizers apologized formally for giving Richard a platform years ago. They committed to better verification of speakers' credentials. They pledged to actively seek out and highlight innovators who work behind the scenes. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was a start. That night, I had dinner with my mother. She had flown in to watch the talk in person. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "Not just for what you've accomplished, but for who you've become." Who have I become? Someone who takes up space. Someone who speaks her truth. Someone who isn't afraid to be brilliant in public. We talked for hours. About the past, the present, the future. About her own experiences being overlooked and undervalued. About the changes she was seeing in the world. "Do you think things are really changing?" she asked. "I think we're asking better questions now. That's the first step." "And Richard? Do you ever think about him?" "Sometimes. But not with anger anymore. Just with curiosity about how someone could build a whole life on lies and think it would last." He thought he was entitled to your work. A lot of people think they're entitled to other people's work. They're just not usually married to the person they're stealing from. She laughed. "True. So what's next for you?" "I'm working on new technology. Quantum computing applications. It's challenging and exciting and completely mine from the start. No partners this time? Just me and a team of people who get proper credit for their contributions. Clear attribution. Transparent processes. Everyone's name on their work." "Sounds perfect." It is. We finished dinner and walked through the city. The night was clear, the streets were alive with people, and I felt completely at peace. I had built something real. Not just a company or a foundation or a reputation. I had built a life where I was visible, valued, recognized. Where my name appeared in bold letters on everything I created. Where I wasn't hiding anymore. And that was worth more than any amount of money or recognition or revenge. That was worth everything. 3 years after the divorce, Stellar Dynamics was valued at $15 billion. We had expanded into quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and advanced encryption. We had offices in 12 countries. We employed over 2,000 people. And everyone knew my name. I stood in my lab, working on a prototype that would revolutionize secure communication. 3 young engineers worked alongside me, asking questions, contributing ideas, learning. All 3 were women. All 3 would have their names on the patent. My phone buzzed. A message from Patricia. "Richard filed for bankruptcy. Thought you should know." I read it twice and felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not pity. Just a distant acknowledgement that consequences had finally caught up completely. I didn't respond. I went back to my work. That evening, I had dinner with Dr. Sharon Hughes, my board member and mentor. She had become a close friend over the years, someone who understood the unique pressures of being a woman in tech. "I heard about Richard," she said. "Patricia told you?" "It's in the business news. Small article, but it's there." I didn't see it. "You don't follow news about him anymore, do you?" "No. There's no point. He's not part of my life." "That's healthy." She sipped her wine. "Do you ever regret how things ended? The public nature of it." I thought about that. No. If I had handled it quietly, nothing would have changed. He would have found another opportunity to take credit for someone else's work. His family would have continued believing he was a genius. And I would have stayed invisible. "You're certainly not invisible now." I smiled. "No. I'm very much visible." We talked about the foundation, which had grown beyond anything I had imagined. We had helped over 300 people reclaim credit for their work. We had changed policies at major corporations and universities. We had created a movement. "You're changing the world," Sharon said. "Not just through your technology but through your advocacy." "I'm just telling the truth. The truth changes the world more than you think." After dinner, I went home to my house. My beautiful, peaceful, entirely mine house. I had redecorated completely. Bright colors everywhere. Art that I loved. Furniture that was comfortable instead of impressive. It looked like me now. Finally. I poured a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking at the city lights. My phone showed several missed calls from journalists wanting comments about Richard's bankruptcy. I ignored them. His failures weren't my story anymore. My story was about what I had built. What I was building. What I would build next. A text came through from an unknown number. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me look. Hi Naomi. This is Simone. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I was young and stupid and believed lies. I didn't know he was using both of us. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what you went through. I'm raising my daughter alone and trying to teach her to be strong like you. Anyway, you don't have to respond. I just needed to say it. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. To let her live with her choices without acknowledgement or absolution. But part of me remembered being young and believing in someone who didn't deserve it. Making choices that seemed right at the time but turned out to be disasters. I typed a response. I hope you and your daughter are well. Teach her to value herself and never make herself small for anyone. That's the best thing you can do for her. I hit send and blocked the number. One response was enough. I didn't need a relationship with her, didn't need to know how she was doing or what she was thinking. I just needed to not carry anger about her anymore. The next day, I had a meeting with a group of high school students who were interested in computer science. 20 young women, all brilliant, all unsure if they belonged in tech. I spent 2 hours with them, showing them my lab, explaining my work in terms they could understand, answering their questions honestly. One girl raised her hand. Do you think it's harder for women in tech? Yes, I said simply. Not because we're less capable, but because the systems weren't built for us. Because people make assumptions about who can be brilliant. Because we're taught to be modest while men are taught to be confident. So what do? Document your work. Take credit for your achievements. Don't wait for permission to be brilliant. And when you're successful, lift other women up with you. Change the systems from the inside. Another girl asked, what happened to your ex-husband? The one who stole your work. The other students leaned in, curious. He filed for bankruptcy this week, I said. He lost everything because everything he had was built on lies. Do you feel bad for him? No. I feel indifferent. He made choices. Those choices had consequences. That's not my responsibility. Don't you want revenge? I got something better than revenge. I got my life back. I got recognition for my work. I got to build something real under my own name. Revenge would have been temporary. This is permanent. They nodded, thinking about that. At the end of the session, several of them came up to thank me. One girl, maybe 16, said something that stuck with me. I was thinking about not pursuing computer science because my boyfriend said I should do something more social, like marketing or communications. But after hearing your story, I'm definitely doing computer science. And I'm getting a new boyfriend. I laughed. Good choice. Do what you love. Never let someone else's comfort determine your future. That night, I received an email from the Nobel Committee. They wanted to interview me for a potential nomination in computer science. My work on quantum encryption had apparently caught their attention. I read the email 3 times. A Nobel Prize. Recognition at the highest level. Not for being someone's wife or partner or supporter, but for my own work. My own genius. My own contributions to science. I called my mother. I might be nominated for a Nobel Prize, I said. She screamed. Actually screamed with joy. I knew it, she said. I always knew you were capable of this. I just wish you had known it sooner. I know it now. That's what matters. We talked for an hour. She cried happy tears. I cried a little too. After we hung up, I sat in my living room thinking about the journey. From invisible wife to recognized innovator. From shadow to spotlight. From silence to speaking truth. It hadn't been easy. There had been pain, betrayal, public battles, private doubts. But it had been worth it. Every difficult moment. Every hard choice. Every time I had to stand up for myself when it would have been easier to back down. All of it had been worth it. Because now I was free. Truly, completely free. Free to create without someone taking credit. Free to speak without someone talking over me. Free to be brilliant without making anyone else comfortable. Free to be myself. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. Saw the Nobel news. Congratulations. You deserve everything good that's coming to you. I smiled and typed back. Thank you. For everything. For protecting me even when I wouldn't protect myself. For standing with me when things got hard. For believing in me. Always, she responded. That's what real friends do. I looked around my living room. At the art on the walls. The books on the shelves. The photos of me at speaking engagements, at the lab, at foundation events. Evidence of a life lived in full color. In bright greens and blues and reds. In bold choices and brave moments and beautiful truth. This was my empire. Built not in shadows this time, but in brilliant, undeniable light. And I was just getting started. The next morning I woke up early and went to my lab. I had a new project starting. Something revolutionary. Something that would change everything again. And this time, from the very first line of code, from the very first patent filing, from the very first presentation, my name would be on it. Naomi Bennett. Inventor. Innovator. Genius. Not someone's wife. Not someone's sister-in-law. Not someone working behind the curtain. Just me. Fully visible. Fully recognized. Fully alive. The phone calls had stopped years ago. The 55 desperate attempts to intimidate me into silence. The family that had thought I owed them everything. The people who had believed I was nothing without their son, their brother, their name. They had learned the truth the hard way. I wasn't nothing without them. They were nothing without me. And now everyone knew it. I turned on my computer and got to work. Building. Creating. Innovating. Doing what I had always done best, but this time with the lights on. This time with the world watching. This time with my name in bold letters at the top of every page. And it felt perfect. Finally, completely, perfectly right.